Season 7 of the Emmy Award-winning docuseries Cardinals Flight Plan, presented by SeatGeek, premiered last night on YouTube, on the Cardinals YouTube channel. Behind-the-scenes series took a look at the first episode, Stick and Pick. The episode focused on 2024 NFL Draft, and exclusive footage from the Cardinals draft room, including a lot from our guest in-studio general manager, Monti Ossenfort, who joins us. By the way, you can check out that episode of Flight Plan on the Cardinals YouTube channel. Monty, thanks for coming in today.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me. Good to be back in here. Just back in February, was in here with you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good to be back here now.
When you lived it and you're the star of it, do you watch Flight Plan?
You know what? I watched it when they sent the precursor to preview it. So I watched it, and then they let me know that it was coming out last night. So it sounds like people were enjoying it. So that's good to hear.
Well, and again, it kind of showed you as a GM really in your element when you've got everything flying around you, which happens at the NFL draft, and the moments leading up to the selection of Darius Robinson, where you're kind of doing the calculus. Is he going to be there? Do I need to trade up? But it also showed you how much you wanted your second selection in the draft, right?
Yeah, that was an exciting time, you know. So, the draft it always comes down to a numbers game, and there's guys that you hope make it to a certain point, and then when people start coming off the board, you have to start doing the numbers, the calculus, like you said, and how far can we get up? What's that cost going to be? Does it make sense? What are we giving up to go get him? And so we were on the clock there, and we were having some discussions there with Dallas in particular. What the episode showed, and a deal didn't come together, and but that turned out to be okay. We got a guy that we really wanted, and we targeted, and we kept the pick that we were going to use to get up there.
Yeah, the episode shows you just going like three more picks, and then we get our guy. Go back to draft night, scale of 1 to 10. What was your concern level that he wasn't going to be there at 27?
Yeah, so I think just going into the week where we try to forecast what guys are going to be there and what guys that we would be comfortable taking there, and then we rely on our pro scouts that do a lot of work on what other teams might need, those picks on either side of us, the few leading in, the few on the other side of us, and we try to predict who's going to take who. And at some point there's certain teams that you're worried about, and you're worried, and hey, we might have to get in front of this team to go up and get the player that we targeted, and so we do that. We take a look at that, and we put that time in, and luckily it worked out for us that night.
Monti Ossenfort, the general manager of the Cardinals, in studio with us here on Bickley Marotta Mornings. We've seen you orchestrate now 2 drafts, and going into this second draft, and we talk so much about it's the most talked about sporting event in the world now, even though it's not a sporting event. But there was so much talk of, nationally especially. Well, Monti Ossenfort traded down last year from 3 to 9 and back up to 6, so he's going to do that again. Did you get a kick out of that? Like, one draft totally pinpointed you as who you are as an executive, because obviously you didn't follow suit this year.
Yeah. I think there's always a lot of speculation, and that goes a little bit with where we were picking. When you're picking that high, there's always interest in that pick, and so I think there was a lot of talk about that, and I think what maybe was overlooked is just the difficulty in doing that. You obviously it's difficult to come to a trade. You need another party to be engaged and willing to do it. And so then to pull that off twice, to drop back and then go back up. We were fortunate last year, or 2 years ago, I guess at this point, 2 drafts ago, that we were able to pull that off. It just wasn't a situation that really enticed us at all to go down that road this year. We were happy sticking with where we were at. Now, if something would have blown us out of the water, hey, maybe we would have considered it more. But at that night, nothing came close to getting us to go down that path.
One of the really cool moments about Flight Plan, in my opinion, was when you selected Marvin Harrison Jr. and you called him and you said, man, it's been you all along. And then he later said, man, I wish I would have known that, which kind of showed how well you played your cards close to your vest. But when we talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., what do you see so far? Because as you know, the bust rate for wide receivers is really, really high. And yet this is a kid, by all accounts, that looks really, really special.
Yeah.
What do you think of him so far?
Yeah, I think Marvin's off to a good start, as are most of our rookies, and so I think with Marvin, it's the on-field ability, definitely, just the size, the route running, the ball skills, the way he goes up and gets the contested balls, but then it's also the things that Marvin does off the field. This isn't a guy who's, obviously Marvin is supremely talented, coming from his upbringing and his father and his bloodlines, but it's how Marvin approaches his job and the things that he does to get himself ready. The rehab, the prehab, the extra works he does on the jugs. It's no accident that Marvin was the 4th pick in the draft. He's earned that ability to do that, and he's come as advertised. The way he's worked here, this first month and a half that we've had him, I mean, it shows. So in our interaction, every interaction that we had with Marvin, just more and more impressed with the person, and so that was something that really made it a no-brainer for us. The tape spoke for itself, his career, his production, and then just getting to know Marvin through the process really sealed the deal for us to put his card in at number 4.
Yeah, on his work ethic, and we talked about this on draft night. Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, everybody knows the name. His father is a Hall of Famer. We know all that, but he was like the 4th receiver in his own recruiting class at Ohio State. So his ability to come in and work is legendary. Has there been the talk of, hey, let's ease back a little bit, Marvin? Can you actually do that with him, or is that something you don't want to go down that road either?
Yeah, I think with all our players, it's about being smart, and our goal is to we're ramping up what we've done this last 6 weeks. We're ramping up for our next step is training camp, and so it's up to all of our rookies to come in and prove themselves and to earn their spot on the team and to carve out a role, and that's no different from Marvin to any one of our players, whether it be a rookie or a free agent that's come in. So, it is a fine line of pushing, but also, health is a key factor of not only getting ourselves ready on the field, but being ready to operate at a high level just from a health standpoint as we get through camp.
One of the big victories last year was creating that culture of physicality, particularly when it came to the rushing game, which led to those incredible triumphs in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and got fans all jacked up. When you start adding skill players to this mix, and when you start adding in Kyler Murray with his experience last year and what's going to translate, how dangerous might this offense be?
Yeah, I think we're excited about the pieces we added, but in reality, it's all going to determine in camp. What we do in camp from here going forward. I think we feel like schematically what we've added to the run game and some running backs, bringing back the guys that we had, adding Tip Ryman as a blocker on the line of scrimmage with the tight end group that we had, adding Marvin and some other pieces in the wide receiver room. I think that complements each other. But ultimately, we're going to have to start over. We're starting from ground zero. What we did last year was at the end of the season, it was encouraging, it was positive, but in all reality, everybody has to reestablish their level of performance and what we're going to be, and we're going to have to establish our identity as a team, and that begins it started initially now, but once we get the pads on in training camp, that's when we're going to establish the identity of the team for the 2024 season.
In terms of improving different rooms, the cornerback room is so much different than it was last year. You got a mix of free agents coming in, Sean Murphy-Bunting coming in, Garrett Williams coming back. You drafted a couple guys. How excited are you to see that revamped cornerback room? And I thought actually through some tough circumstances they held up pretty well last year, but I think it's a big upgrade. How excited are you about that room?
Yeah, I think that's a room where we definitely wanted to go into the offseason and add competition, and we feel like we did that. Like you said, through Sean Murphy-Bunting, and then the rookies that we drafted. We drafted 3 rookie cornerbacks that will compete in that room, and then really I think an unspoken part of this is just the jump that we're expecting from our rookies last year. We always talk about there's no bigger jump that happens in a player's career than from their rookie year to their second year. And so we had some guys last year that got valuable experience. Star Thomas, Keitrell Clark, we're Devad Wilson, like those guys we're expecting out of those guys a jump from year 1 to year 2. And so, that room is going to be full of competition. There's athleticism, there's speed, there's physicality, and we're excited to see how that plays out. And so, I think competition, we strongly believe that competition brings out the best in everybody. And, the more that we can add that to the group, it's going to push the level of the performance up of the whole unit and of that room particularly.
We'll start the second segment here, Monty. There's so much talk about Kyler Murray and his developing relationships with teammates over time. And I think that's a fascinating aspect. I want to focus on a developing relationship that you have. The successful franchises, head coach, general manager in lockstep. I think it's a strength of this organization right now. But can you reflect on how your relationship with Jonathan Gannon over 18 months now has really come together and developed?
Yeah, I think that's a huge relationship, and I think like we talk on a daily basis, multiple times a day, and I think it's about everything that affects the football team. And so, there's a lot of things. It's not only on the field; it's things how we're structuring meetings, how we're structuring practice times, how we're structuring our training camp, and everything that affects the team. Those are things that really Michael Bidwell has tasked us with being in charge of the entirety of football operations. And so, nothing that happens in our building, it goes through us, and really we talk about that. And so, the other piece that I would add in that is ownership, and I think that is a third critical piece, and the resources that Michael has given JG and myself to do the things that and share our vision, and the way that the three of us have worked together to put that vision into place. I think it's a constant process and it's constantly evolving, but I think all three of those relationships are key. And so, with JG and I in particular, it's everything. It's during the season, it's through this draft process. It's just what we just got done now in the OTA process. And so, and really it'll continue through the summer. And, as we lean into camp, we'll start bouncing ideas off each other. So, I think that's continuing to grow. It's something that we felt strongly about that we could make this work initially when this relationship started, and very excited about where it is, where it's going, and what it's going to mean for our football operations as a whole.
I like this collective attitude that you and JG have, and that is kind of wiping out last year, which at first I'm like, why would you do that? You won 4 games, and yet you created all this hope and all this great culture. Why would you want to wipe that free? But then again, you see how teams and nothing really seems to carry over one year to the next. It's probably real smart to kind of reset expectations. How deep are you guys going with that? Your thoughts on just not letting any of what you did last year get into the mix?
Yeah, I think the transient nature of NFL rosters and the way that this year's team is going to be different than last year's team, and so it's hard to win in this league. It's hard to sustain success, and there's no other way to do it than to do it step by step from the ground level. And so you can't skip steps. We can't skip the building blocks of the foundation we're trying to build, and that happens really. It began here this last 6 weeks. It'll really go full gear in training camp when we put the pads on. We start building the team, but we really have to, every player, every coach, every staff member has to reestablish their identity for the team, their role. Everybody has to operate. We had a meeting with the staff the other day where everybody, no matter what your job is in the organization, has to operate at a high level. And it really, quite frankly, it doesn't matter what happened last year. It really doesn't, because when we're lining up to kick off there in Buffalo, there in the first week of September, like nobody's going to look back on last year. What's going to matter is what we do going forward. And so, it's that constant pressure. There's got to be an intentionality and urgency into everything that we do, for the players, for the coaches, for everybody, in order for us to be successful. Because this is the highest level of competition of sport in the entire nation, and so that's why people want to do it. That's why everybody tunes in and watches. But it's what we do from here going forward, and everybody has to bring that from the start of the season through the end.
Monti Ossenfort, the GM of the Cardinals, in studio with us here on Bickley Marotta Mornings. Kyler Murray's going into year 6 as a starting quarterback. He's been under the microscope since day 1 as the number 1 pick. We talk on this show a lot about his growth as a leader, the work ethic he showed in coming back from his first serious injury. I'm curious, how different is maybe the preconceived notion that you had about Kyler Murray when you were in other organizations? How different is it? Because we talk about it all the time. Kyler gets raked over the coals unfairly because of things in the past. He is growing. Is there a difference between what your notion of Kyler Murray was and what he actually is?
Yeah, and I think I heard some of those stories. it's hard for me to comment. I wasn't here. All I can say is that from the second that I walked in the building and seeing the way that he attacked his rehab, that was hard what Kyler had to do last year. And I'm not talking just solely the rehab, but he had to learn, all the transition that we had on the roster and all the transition that we had on the coaching staff. And so for him to try to ingrain himself in that, while not really being a part of it, because most of the time he was off on the side working on his rehab. And so the way he was able to come back last year and start that process, and then really to go full force in that here this offseason, where he's been right in the middle of everything that we're doing, workouts, practice, meetings, on the field and OTAs, like that's enabled him to, really see what we're doing, buy into it, be a part of it, and then really take that role of what comes with the job description of being a starting quarterback. And so to see Kyler grow into that, and really, I can't comment on where he was. All I can know is the growth that I've seen on him, both physically, mentally, from a leadership standpoint here in this year and a half that we've been here. It's been great to see. And I think, really he's just, it's the tip of the iceberg with him. I think him, and along with the rest of the leaders on our team, the rest of the players on our team that are trying to establish a role, I think there's opportunity for growth for everybody. And, Kyler leads that front, and we're excited to see what he can do going into this season.
It's pretty obvious in a good way that you and your staff, you look for a certain type of football player, maybe a certain age range to keep guys in their late 20s up to 30 to get them right in their prime. Tell me about the defense that you've assembled. Do you have a playoff caliber defense, and what are your expectations in general this year? Do you feel like you need more time to build this out, or can you be a playoff caliber team this year?
Yeah, I don't think I'm not great in the prediction business, so I think I'm gonna stay away from that. But here's what I think is I think we've added a lot of good football players, and I think we've added competition and on both sides of the ball. And I think ultimately what that's going to do is that's necessary as you go through the attrition of an NFL season. And so, whether it's the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, like I believe we are improved. I believe we've raised the talent level of our team, and there's going to be legitimate battles for roster spots this year. And that's a good problem. It is a good problem to have to make tough decisions. And so, my expectations for this team are no different than they were last year, is to go in, compete, and be competitive to win every single game that we go into. I think that we were close to doing that last year, that we were in almost every game. There was a couple that, got away from us a little bit. But now there's another step to take. Now there's another step to take in terms of it's one thing to be competitive in those games, and now it's another to take a step and close some of those games out. There's a very thin line between winning and losing in the NFL, and really a lot of games, most games I would say, come down to 4 or 5 plays, and it's the position that you put yourself to come up on the right side of those 4 or 5 plays that's going to put us in a position to win more than we lose next year.
All right, lastly, the kickoff is going to be the new wild card in the NFL.
Buckle up, boys.
Buckle up, baby. Tell us how you're approaching it schematically. Share what you can about how you think this is going to look.
Yeah, I think there's going to be, Jeff Rodgers has done an outstanding job of doing what we can do here this past spring, the last 6 weeks of trying to get guys. And it's an interesting look. And it is going to be wild. And I think for all of us, we've talked about this at length. It's really, the preseason is going to be huge. I think teams are going to approach this differently, and I think we're going to have to wait and see. And, it's going to bring excitement, and I think it's going to affect roster decisions. I think it's going to affect the composition of body types as we go forward. And, I think it's going to be interesting to see how, I think different teams are going to approach it different ways. I think some are going to say, yep, let's go down there and try to cover it. And I think some are just going to say, forget it. We're going to give you the extra 5.
Right.
And which teams those are, I don't know. So stay tuned. We'll see. I'm as anxious to see that one as you guys are.
Yeah. Season 7 of the Emmy Award-winning docuseries Cardinals Flight Plan, presented by SeatGeek. It debuted on YouTube last night. You can check that out at youtube.com/azcardinals. And if you want information, season tickets available in the club and terrace levels, and single game and group tickets for Cardinals home games in 2024. Go to azcardinals.com/tickets. Monty, a pleasure to have you in studio. Thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Buy those tickets, guys. Let's get State Farm rocking this year. Thanks. Let's go. Let's get rolling.
Thanks again to Monti Ossenfort for joining us.
Thanks for watching Bickley and Marotta. Click to see the latest Bickley Blast and hit the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.